Want to welcome you once again in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. Unfortunately, today we can't be in the studios that were provided to us by First Star Logistics, and man, I'm missing that because those studios are second to none. We really do appreciate the support given to us by First Star Logistics. It's second to none, as is the studio. I mean, that mural, that wall mural that was done for a Christmas present is just, I mean, it's humbling to say the least. It kind of encompasses the playing days with the Bengals and the New Jersey Generals. And man, folks at First Star Logistics are thoughtful to say the least. And you guys are all greatly appreciated. You're great friends as well as anything else, that's for sure. So we want to kind of, a lot's happened. And where do we begin? It's crazy. Let's talk about the game the Bengals had to win, first and foremost, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they handled business. They did a good job of it. Defensively, it was the best performance of the year. Kind of foreshadowing Lou Anarumo's dismissal, which we'll kind of get to here in a little bit. But the Bengals held the Steelers to 193 yards on 58 snaps, 3.3 yards per snap, not per rush, per snap. In the first game against Pittsburgh here at Paycor, Steelers got 520 yards offense on 66 snaps, 7.9 yards per play, as opposed to 3.3. They rushed for 110 yards in the last game just played. The Bengals held them to 74. They held them to 3.2 yards a carry. In the first game at Paycor, it was 4.2. How about this one? Net yards passing. In the victory at Paycor, the Steelers threw for 410 yards. In the defeat that they had in Pittsburgh, 119. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's amazing. It's stark, the contrast between what was done by the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively the first time the Bengals played and the adjustments that Lou Anarumo and his coaching staff made from a game plan standpoint and the execution of such adjustments made by the players. In the first game, they were very concerned about the wide receivers. You know, they were going to make sure that Boyd Pickens was not going to hurt them deep. And they had everybody back in coverage, and they were given all this check down room to backs out of the backfield. I mean, Wilson had checked it down. 120 of his yards were checkdowns to running backs. There was nobody there. Yards after catch. I mean, it was crazy. Man, it took all of that away. I mean, they crowded the line of scrimmage. They went to a 4-3 look. 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers said, "You're not running it," because that was one thing that they wanted to take away and make them throw the football, make them be one-dimensional, and they did. And it was a very, very successful game plan, to say the least. It was a hard-fought football game. In this game, as opposed to in the first game, there was tons of communication defensively. It was assignment sound. It was technique sound. They tackled. In the first game at Paycor, they missed 14 tackles. I don't know. They didn't miss many in Pittsburgh. That's for darn sure. So it was an unbelievably well-executed bounce-back performance. The Cincinnati Bengals win the football game, a thriller, 19-17. I mean, it was just a very cold day, obviously. Very, very physical. A lot of big hitting going on, as you would expect. AFC North at its best. I mean, the Bengals have to go on the road in the cold weather against an opponent that they know each other cold. They know each other's tendencies. I mean, it was a slobber knocker like they always are. And the Bengals come out on top. That's the first thing they had to do. Then Aaron Rodgers says, "Hey, I'm going to light it up. I'm going to have one final performance that I'm very, very proud of, and I'm going to beat the Miami Dolphins." That was another thing that had to happen. But the final thing, the Denver Broncos had to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was the Chiefs put their JV team out there, and Denver had their varsity team that was, have to win this football game, and it wasn't even a contest. It was a total blowout, embarrassing, really. The Chiefs just rolled over and played dead, and Denver just advances to the playoffs. So Zac Taylor decides here this season did not go as anticipated. They were 4-8, and they wanted a 5-game winning streak to finish with a 9-8 record to give them a possibility to get into the playoffs. They wanted a great run. I mean, they were one of the hottest teams in the NFL. I think there's only 2 teams in the league with a better than 5-game winning streak to end the season. So the Bengals were playing about as well as anybody, and all the media, basically was saying, "You don't want to play the Bengals in the playoffs, and you don't want to have to play them, Buffalo." Well, now they're not playing them. And Zac, obviously, I think had been thinking about this 4-8 start. It's nowhere near what we thought we'd be, where we would be, how we would be there. And of course, defensively, there was a lot of struggling going on. I mean, the Bengals are scoring over 30, but giving up more defensively. And as we know, in the first few games of the season, of course, the game that killed them were the Patriots. Patriots coming to Paycor and knocking the Bengals off. It was one of their 4 wins on the season. They won their first game, they won their last game of the season, not much in between. And they fired their coach, cost the head coach's job. Bengals lose to that football team in the opener at Paycor. And when it happens, and oh boy, that could be a problem. That could be a reason they don't make the playoffs. And basically it was. And then there were, games in between. I mean, there were so many close contests in the beginning of the season. It's crazy. At Kansas City, they lose by a point. They lose to Baltimore twice by a total of 4 points. I mean, just crazy stuff. A play here, a play there. This could have been a 12-win football team, but it didn't happen. And defense was a big part of the reason why, a big problem with that 4-8 start. And I think it probably Zac had been thinking along the lines of, I'm going to have to make some changes here. They go on the 5-game winning streak. And what would have been interesting to me is if Kansas City had beaten Denver and the Bengals had gotten into the playoffs, I wonder if Zac would have gone with the changes that he decided to make with dismissing Lou Anarumo from the defensive coordinator position. And then, of course, along with that, some of the assistants go Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, James Bettcher, the linebacker coach, and then on the offensive side of things, Frank Pollack, the offensive line coach, goes. So 4 changes made in the assistant coaching ranks, one of them being a coordinator. If the Bengals had made the playoffs, what if they had won in Buffalo? If they had made the playoffs, do you think the changes would have happened? Maybe. If they had lost the football game. What if they had won in Buffalo? What if they had won a couple of playoff games? I mean, those things you just don't know. It's history that never happened, but it's interesting. But Zac, I give Zac a lot of credit because those meetings are brutal. They just have to be. They just have to be brutal. I know we're doing this podcast on Monday, and it's a couple of days after the football game took place on Saturday. But they've had they're having their meetings now, organizational meetings. The coaches, Zac's meeting with every single player. He met with every single coach, and of course made some coaching changes. So when that happens, those meetings, those face-to-face, they have to be so difficult. I mean, these guys, I mean, they're friends. They're friends on top of everything else. It's like, man, it rips your heart out to have to make some of these decisions and do what you need to do. The National Football League is a great game. But man, it can be a brutal business. There's no question about it. It can be so tough. And these are the tough things that you have to take care of from a business standpoint. So now it's like, where do you go? What do you think at defensive coordinator? I mean, there are head coaches like in New England who is a great defensive coordinator, Bill Belichick pedigree background. You say, hey, is he a candidate as a defensive coordinator? There are other coaches out there. I mean, all season long, I know the personnel department has a coach, has a list of coaching candidates. Probably Zac has a list of coaching candidates. Or management people probably have a list of coaching candidates. And at some point in time, they're probably going to get together here and, hey, let's kind of consolidate the list. And here's the list. Maybe it's down to 25 names. And maybe it gets down smaller than that. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Maybe that doesn't happen that way at all. Maybe Zac says, my brother is in the coaching ranks. He coached at college level. He coached at the NFL level, as have I. We've got a lot of people in our network in the coaching tree. It's a big forest. It's not just a tree. We've got our own list of coaches that we feel like we need to talk to for these positions, these possibilities. So however the list is made, I'm sure there's going to be a list that's going to be discussed. And obviously, Zac Taylor is the head coach. Zac Taylor makes the final call. I mean, people can give him input and just think about this guy, think about that guy. all day long till the cows come home. But Zac Taylor is the head football coach. Zac Taylor's one-loss record is directly influenced by the people on his staff, obviously. So it's his deal. It is his deal. And hopefully he gets to coaches in for the interviewing process sooner rather than later, because they've already fired some other head coaches that, and they're already probably, okay, here's some candidates we want to bring in an interview for head coaching opportunities. So when they get their opportunity, they're going to have a list of coordinators, defensive coordinators and offensive line coaches and linebacker coaches and defensive line coaches as well. So you'd like to get yours done before they make their decision on who those head coaches might be. So it's kind of a race to the finish line as such. And honestly, Zac may have in mind already pretty good short list of people that he's thinking about. And they'll talk about it organizationally. I mean, it's not a dictatorship. And if you've got resources and opportunity for feedback, like every football team has from an organizational standpoint, it'd be foolhardy not to take advantage of it. It will at least confirm maybe some of the things your thought process is covering, in terms of the coaching possibilities and opportunities. So, very, very interesting. I mean, you talk about a roller coaster for the players, the coaches, the whole Bengals organization, the fan base, everybody. Man, win that football game, take care of business against Pittsburgh. And as I said, Aaron Rodgers helps. The Denver Broncos don't. So, it's like, wow, the roller coaster's going up, then up a little bit more. And Denver brings it to a screeching halt. I mean, it's over. It's done. And then Zac Taylor decides to shake it up. He feels like he needs to do something differently. And, that's not an easy thing to do. My admiration and respect for Zac Taylor's gone up. I mean, that's a hard trigger to pull, man. And there's no guarantees. There's no, okay, is that the right decision? Whoever I bring on as the next defensive coordinator, is that the right decision? Or offensive line coach? And, of course, Frank Pollack was run game coordinator as well as offensive line coach. Do you make that part of the designation of that position? Do you not have a run game coordinator? You just have an offensive line coach. And then everybody else is involved in the run game, and pass game coordinator is Dan Pitcher, and he's the the offensive coordinator as well. So, I mean, it's I think there's a lot of things that are going to be thought through. One thing we do know, they've got an offense. I'm telling you that right now. And Joe Burrow led the National Football League in passing yards, passing attempts, completions, touchdown passes. I mean, the gamut. And then you have a wide receiver that won the Triple Crown. They're both Pro Bowlers. Third Pro Bowler, Trey Hendrickson, leads the NFL in sacks. The first time in NFL history, a trio like that led the National Football League in all those categories. First time it's ever happened. And they don't make the playoffs. I can understand why Zac, made the decision that he had to make. It's something. Some things have to change, and you got to take advantage of things. You cannot waste any more Joe Burrow years. I mean, he's magnificent. The dude is phenomenal. The numbers he put up are mind-boggling, historic. Can't waste them anymore. Jamar Chase put up crazy, stupid numbers. I mean, that Triple Crown is like, that might be untouchable. I mean, it's absolutely nuts what he did. 17 touchdown passes tied Carl Pickens' record. I wasn't sure that would ever be tied, and came within a whisker of breaking it. These things are crazy. I mean, offensively, they can get it done with anybody. Got to get it on the right course on a very, very consistent basis defensively, and get it done and make the playoffs. Not just once, make the playoffs again and again and again, and be a legitimate Super Bowl contender again and again and again, because got some pieces, got some pieces that are extremely hard to find. And now it's a matter of, okay, you draft prospects. You know, of course, there's going to be signings in the offseason. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. You know, all these guys. T. Higgins had an extraordinary year as well. All these guys deserve to be paid. Got to figure out how to get them all paid. I mean, they've earned it. And then you have to say, okay, what do we do? Who else do we need to? We got these top tier guys. The next tier, how many of these guys do we sign? You know, Mike Hilton. You bring Mike Hilton back. Oh man, you got to bring Mike Hilton back. I mean, there are players at every single level that you have to consider. How do I fit them into the salary cap? Okay, where's our need in the draft? What's the priority when we draft these players? Now we got to develop them. It's drafting them is one thing, developing them is another. The last 2 years, every draft pick they drafted made the football team. I mean, is that going to be the case with this upcoming draft? If that's the case, you got to put the bat on the ball again. And you have to really start to develop some of these rookies that you've drafted and have made the football team over the last couple of years and expand their role and keep developing them. I mean, there's a lot going on with this football team. And one thing that is the case, nothing stays the same. And with respect to the National Football League, and I can remember today when I was a player, you come in after the final game, you're not in the playoffs. And thankfully, you won that last game. And thankfully, the football team went on a 5-game winning streak to finish with 4 straight winning seasons. That's hard to do. I mean, you know, you get that done, you're getting something done. So it's easier to say goodbye to everybody when you're on an up note, even though it was disappointing, bitterly disappointing that you didn't make the playoffs. This football team is at least a playoff caliber team and with capability to advance in the playoffs. It didn't happen. And that's why the changes that were decided on were made. But you do say goodbye to people. And it might be the last time you're even seeing them. It might be your goodbye forever, not just goodbye until we get back together for off-season workouts and all that sort of thing. I mean, Lou Anarumo is saying goodbye to everybody. Marion Hobby is saying goodbye to everybody. James Bettcher is saying goodbye to everybody. Frank Pollack is as well. You know, and the thing is, the coaches that are still there, doesn't mean they'll be there until the season starts. I mean, a new defensive coordinator comes in. I'm sure the organization is going to say, look, we really feel good about some of these defensive coaches we've retained. You know, we feel good about what we've got in the secondary, and we feel good about some of these guys, some of these components, some of these pieces. And the defensive coordinator that they're sold on may say, look, I'm coming under one condition. I bring my people in. I've got a system. I've got people that know my system. I don't want to have to teach my system to coaches before I teach it to my players. And, you know, that might be a big issue with some guys. Now you're going to have to make a decision. You know, is this defensive coordinator head and shoulders above everybody else? But, you know, he wants to bring all his own people in. And now you're going to have to say, okay, say goodbye to some people that you didn't necessarily think you were going to have to say goodbye to. But I think when they had the meetings, it was probably talked about. You know, as of right now, we'd like to have you back, but we don't know yet who our defensive coordinator is going to be. We'll do what we can. We think a lot of you, but it may not work out, you know, and that's a meeting that is tough because, you know, these young coaches have families, you know, and Lou Anarumo has a family. All these coaches have a family. And that's why, like I said, the NFL is a great game, but man, it can be a tough business. Because, you know, you're hopscotching around, moving here, there, and everywhere. And, you know, you're on a merry-go-round sometimes in your coaching career, and your families are on it with you. And that dynamic can be tough. And Mike Brown is very sensitive to that. I mean, his dad was a football coach. He's a football lifer. He is very, very sensitive to life in the National Football League. Believe me, he has a very, very he's super in touch with it. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, a lot to think about. Excuse me, a lot to think about. The good news is with that 4-8 start, they showed the intestinal fortitude to turn it around, not quit. I mean, it takes some determination, a will to win, some guts, caring about each other, the players caring about each other, the coaches caring about each other, the coaches caring about the players caring about the coaches. All that has to happen. They almost had a December to remember. Pittsburgh beat them in Cincinnati on December 1st. But the Bengals and then they go on a 4-game winning streak for the rest of the month of December. I was talking about the November to remember. We had an 81 where we had 5 games in November, won them all. And that was kind of the impetus that took us all the way to the Super Bowl. This could have been a December to remember. Didn't get it done on December 1st, Pittsburgh at Paycor. But then they make restitution in early January, going to Pittsburgh and beating them. So they do get that 5-game winning streak, but it's December and just that first week of November. Came up 1 game short. 1 game short. Everybody knows this is a good football team. Everybody knows that it underachieved. It didn't get done. It did not meet expectations. Let's face it, it just didn't. And as a result, some people had to pay the piper. There are consequences. Some people get caught up in those consequences. Doesn't mean they're not good football coaches. Doesn't mean they're not going to land on their feet elsewhere. I hope each and every one of them do if they want to do that, because they're capable and they're really good coaches and they're great people. So, but as the old saying goes, that's life in the National Football League. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.